All right. Okay, cool. We are starting. Hello, everybody. How's it going? So I posted the link in Discord. So hopefully those of you who are my patrons, patrons, I always don't know if I should call you Patreons or patrons. So anyhow, I posted that in the Discord, so hopefully people can join if they wish. All right, how's everybody doing? I hope everybody's doing well. Let me see. I hope this is public. Is it? Looks like it is. Okay, yeah, there's definitely sound. Okay, good. So anyhow, let's see here. Uh-oh. Hey, how's it going?
I'm good.
Good. So, well, cool. You're the first person to join up. So you had a question about the charging of the patrons earlier?
Yes, it said $1 per video, and I kind of freaked out because I was if you said that you're going to start multi videos, that means that's $1 a video, and I'm kind of low on funds this month.
Yeah, don't worry about it. I mean, if you like if you have to stop for any period of time, that's not a problem. But yeah, because usually what it is I'll post links in Patron, but I only charge once a month. So there will be one that you'll get charged for, and then that one that's it. But I might post, like I posted the link for this hangout in there, and I'll post videos. Right now my schedule is kind of sporadic, but like let's say I put up 4 videos, only one of them is going to be is like I have the option to charge people for it or not. So I only charge people once a month for it. Now if people want to donate more, I have no problem with that, but I'm not going to charge them more. Does that make sense?
Okay, so like the last, for example, the last hangout we did, I'd be charged for that hangout,
No,
not for this hangout.
no, you're not charged for that hangout.
Okay,
You're not. So far this month, I haven't charged any of my patrons.
okay,
Yeah. So I think I might have a video coming out. I have a video that I'm working on that I want to put out. It's just not ready yet. That I'm hoping to put out soon. That one you'll be charged for. But these
well
hangouts, no, I don't charge you for
I have like $30. I had 50, but my SSI came in.
them.
Uh, Insurance uh, monthly came in, so
Mm-hmm.
I'm fine. It says I'll be charged on the first. I get paid on the third.
Okay.
So
Yeah. Yeah. I think Patron charges people on the first. I think.
it does. That's what I saw anyway.
Yeah. And another option, if you want, Leon, if you're like short on funds, you
Mhm.
know, um, don't don't worry about being a patron. If you want, what you can do is you can donate via PayPal. So, like,
Mhm.
let's say you feel like $1 a month is fine for you. You could donate even through PayPal if you want, and that way you don't have to concern yourself with being charged like twice a month. Because I think sometimes I don't know how it works out, but sometimes I notice that my patrons get double charged. That's only happened twice, but sometimes it does happen. And so, like, if that happens, just contact me and let me know, and I can reverse it. Or what I can do is I can reimburse you for the funds, and then wait for it to get worked out with Patron.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Um.
I mean, I'm very easygoing. I really appreciate any support whatsoever. So I'm not going to try and trick you. I'm not going to try and you know what I mean. I'm not going to try to pull anything shady. And I completely understand if you need to, you know, concentrate on your own funds. That's not a problem. I completely understand that because we got to take care of ourselves first, and then we can take care of, you know, other people secondary. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, the reason is my friend and ride is out of town, and when he gets back, it'll be next week. We're hanging out next weekend, and then on Monday, when we week after he comes back, this is my D&D day. So
Mm-hmm.
I need to give him gas money so he can take me to
Yeah.
D&D.
Yeah.
And I have to play, and it'll be 2 weeks before I play.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And yeah. So I mean, you know, if you can't, if you need to stop on 1 month or whatever, that's fine. Because I think you have. I haven't done it myself. I haven't been a patron to anyone, but I think you have the option of like let's say it does come through and it says, you know, you're going to be charged for such and such a date. I think you have the option of declining it if you need to, but I could be wrong about that. But anyhow, one other thing that I really appreciate people do is just simply like and share my videos. That really helps because then what happens is you expose my video to other people who are following you or you know follow you on Twitter or whatever, and that's really helpful too because that helps to kind of spread my videos around so that more people watch my videos. You know, because that's one of the hardest things is to get people to get your videos out there. You know, so other people watch it. So
Yeah.
anyhow.
Like with Loki, I was a $10 tier, but
Mhm.
after the latest bill that came in, I went, yeah, I can't do this. So I went down to $1 with her.
Oh, wow, yeah. You will. What was it? $10 per video?
No, $10 per month.
Oh, $10 per month.
But again, I kind of freaked out and I was like, I can't stay at this tier for long, at least until I get paid next month.
Yeah, yeah. That's
Well,
why I
this,
prefer to have like low tiers. You know, because I don't want anybody like giving me $100 every month. I mean, actually, no. Let me rephrase that. I'd love it if somebody gave me $100 a month, but I also know that most people can't afford $100 a month. You know what I mean? So that's the way I look at it. You know, I wouldn't want to put people out there. And
the patrons I have up right now, I'm doing are Sakura Talk, you, and Loki.
oh, good, good.
Um, the thing that taught me the most the next month, see, was my teeth cleaning. Turns
Mm-hmm.
out it was for more than I thought, and the reason I love the dentist so much is I was able to cut my bill in half for this month and next month.
Mm-hmm.
So next month I'll pay off the rest for the bill of $50, and I'll be set.
Oh, cool.
So,
So do you have any questions for me, Leon?
uh, honestly, my brain's kind of a blank.
All right.
I'm currently making my D&D character. Hopefully that'll kickstart my head.
Okay. Yeah. So I thought the topic today would be language and magic. I think that that is something that's very important. I think it's one of the things that most people don't really address um, in magic, but language is very important. How you phrase things, uh, certain associations that people that are associated with certain words. Um, so language in magic is very, very important. And I don't think too many people really think about that too much.
Is it kind of weird that I made up my own language for No absolute reason.
I don't think so. Why?
Well, I guess it's a way for me to, again, since I'm still in the closet, instead of saying it in English, I can say it in my language. And hopefully, since the intent is the same, it'll still work.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, uh, it's that's kind of what I meant. But like, let's say, if you use use certain words which are associated with certain things, you are not only are you relaying information, but you can also relay deeper information, like using the word cult instead of an organization, or using such words that have already certain associations with them. So that's what I meant by the fat language. Now, if you make up a language to use for yourself, I mean, that I'm assuming that what happens is that those words correlate or mean something to you that is in English. I'm assuming that. Would that be correct?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, so I mean, it's how we would use language in ritual, or even in trying to influence people, because often maybe there's maybe you're writing a speech, or maybe you're even conducting a video, or maybe even sending a tweet or whatever. Any time where you are using language to convey a thought to someone else, you can use language to influence them emotionally, or influence them uh, to explore their thoughts, or to associate it with something else. And even though that's a very common type of magical, well, I hate to say magical influence, because it's not really a magical influence. It's just an influence. It's actually an influence of language. But that's important, and oftentimes people forget about that. I mean, we're in coming into a very much a war of words and a war of language on the internet, and maybe war isn't a good descriptor of that, but definitely there's you can see language being manipulated and being used, and even like some words being taken on a different connotation, or different meaning by people. So that's what I meant by that. So let's see. You got Julio thrice. I don't know if you knew this or not, Leon, but it's never too late to give your heart to Jesus. It's never too late.
I tried and it didn't work, so
This
I
isn't
asked for a
England.
refund.
There are no lords and ladies. That's funny. I said it's never too late to follow the Lord and Lady. And Julio responds, "This isn't England. There are no lords and ladies."
How would you know?
Yeah, I think that probably flew right over their head. So, well, I don't know. This is one of those topics. I don't know if I usually maybe start these at 7 p.m. So that's probably why some of the usual people aren't here. I
Let
started
me
a little
check to
early.
see if there's anyone on Discord.
So I'll offer if Julio would like to, they're more than welcome to join us. If that's all right with you, Leon.
Sure. I mean,
Okay.
I'm just putting stats into a spreadsheet, so.
You're putting what into a spreadsheet?
I'm putting stats into a spreadsheet to see what combination works best for my fighter.
Oh, okay.
So I'm a bit of a min-maxer and stuff like that, so.
Well, you have a range between 3 and 18, right? So.
Oh, what was that? Sorry.
I said you have a range between number 3 and 18, between 3 and 18.
Yeah. Well, eventually there's a cap. You can only go up to a certain cap in terms of it's called point buy. And your starting stats can only be up so high, or else we have to re-roll them.
Now, what system do you use? Do you use 5d6 and then eliminate the? Excuse me. Do you roll 4d6 and eliminate one, or how do you do it?
Well, in point buy, you take certain stats, like the standard array of 15, 14, 13, 12, 10, 8, and you arrange them to. Well, that's the way I do it. You arrange them with whatever stats work best. My fighter has 18 dexterity because she's an archer, sharpshooter, and her stats are 18 dexterity, 12 strength, 16 constitution, 12 intelligence, 10 wisdom, and 8 charisma. So I'm rolling her as a archer kind of class.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was typing before, but do you use a particular system?
I use point buy.
You use what?
It's called point buy.
Point buy.
Point buy is you have a pool of points that you can draw from.
Okay.
Like I can find my PHP real quick. It is falling apart. Ability score point cost. There is 15 to cost 9 points. You have 27 points you can draw from. 15 costs 9, 14 costs 7, and 13 costs 5. Yeah. It's rather tricky. Oh, we have someone.
Hey, Animist.
Hey there, I'm just sorting the windows out. I'll be a minute.
Okay, no problem. Oh, okay. Now, do you play like straight pen and paper? Or do you ever play online D&D?
Pen and paper with a group.
Okay, nice.
My laptop can't be on for too long, or it's the chassis of the laptop is warped and the fan's damaged.
Oh wow, that sucks. So then it gets really hot. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, straight pen and paper, or mechanical pencil and paper.
Right. And so you actually play with people like in their homes, like face to face.
Yeah.
Nice. Well, that's how I started out playing. So I mean, that's how you had to do it back in the day because there was no internet.
Just a quick tip, personal experience: don't play in game shops, especially on Magic night, because the noise is deafening. We actually had to move locations because it was so freaking noisy.
Now, I've never played in a game store. I always just knew people who played, and so we played. But I know that there was like I lived in Burbank for a while, and in Burbank there was a I forgot if I was invited or somehow I found out about a game going on at an actual game store, and I found out about it, and I think I was invited to that, and I never went. But that was the only time that I had actually heard of like a game happening in a game store before. I guess they set it up in the back or something. I'm not too sure.
The noisiest game I ever played.
What's going on back there?
Noisiest game I ever played was at a place called the Batcave. They had Yu-Gi-Oh! Night and D&D night in the same room.
Mm-hmm.
And the room is about the size of, let's say, about a standard living room, about 40 people. And I'm like, never do this again. I don't know why they decided to have Yu-Gi-Oh, Magic, and D&D in the same room. And I'm like, either buy out the places next to you and expand, or never do this again.
How's everything going with you, Animist?
Oh, I guess I'm okay. I'm awake. I'm just kind of hanging out. There's really nothing special going on with me right now. I'm just basically waiting to move.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. So,
yeah,
so you haven't moved yet?
No, supposedly over the weekend. So I'll be packing up some stuff that I can hopefully ship down there and figure out what to take and what's worth taking. And then I'm going to be on an airplane, and I'm going to be thousands of feet from my planet. And I'm not sure how that's going to go.
Do you fly a lot?
I haven't flown since the early 80s, so it's been whatever the heck, 35 years since I was.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah, I flew around some as a kid here and there and everywhere, and then it just never came up again.
Mm-hmm.
So it'll be interesting to see how that, feels. I don't recall it being any great experience, but I haven't been 35,000 feet away from my planet for a while. That's a long way to be separated from your world,
It is. It's scary. The part that I hate the most is taking off. And then once we're in the air, that's okay. But as soon as we hit like some pretty rough turbulence, I start freaking out. But even the landing part doesn't really bother me that much. It's really taking off and turbulence. Those are,
the landing part, you're going to do one way or another, right?
Exactly.
You're
gonna land.
Just don't, because I don't know why the spiritual gods made me go pee around that time, but I got up, walked down the aisle, I heard the thing sound, like I better go sit my ass down.
Oh, the little bell.
I was up when it hit down, and I went down.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I got the whole please return to your seats, return your tray to an upright position. They're not kidding about that. That hurt.
Mm-hmm.
So I've flown before, but sorry, go on.
Oh, that's okay. I was just gonna say. So, Animist, there was somebody in the chat who was trying to save my soul, and I guess anybody else's who was in hanging out in the chat, and I invited them on. So I hope that's okay.
Oh, that's fine. They can come on. Weekday trolls aren't as bad as weekend trolls. I don't think they're as stoned.
Right.
Saturday night trolls are the worst because I think they're usually high, so they're kind of incoherent. Weekday trolls, I think, they're putting some real effort into it, or they just happen to have a weekday off. I don't know.
Well, this person, to be fair, this person doesn't seem like they're trolling as much as it is that they're probably like, they're just probably postulating like they feel like they have to, save somebody's soul. So.
Yeah. Okay.
You know what I mean? There's like a difference between like somebody who's like being fucking obnoxious about it, and then somebody's like, "Hey, have you heard about Jesus?" It's like, "Yes, I have heard about Jesus. Thank you very much."
sorry, I got my buttons backwards. Is it Julio or Julio? Thrice
Yeah, I think it's Julio. I'm not too
Oh,
sure.
well, they say they're a Gnostic. We get along fine with Gnostics. Manichaean, that's not a problem. They've got a very idealized version of divinity. They're not like, you know, toilet paper beard, whatever the hell.
Right, Bill Schnoebelen.
They've got a conceptual basis of divinity. I got no problem with that. It's just a hop skip. It's just a hop and a skip away from paganism anyway.
Mm. Yeah, well, I think definitely back in their days, I mean, there was definitely a lot of I don't know how much. I mean, there was, well, the cult of Christ came up, you know, and that was pretty much in the Middle East, and so it encountered a lot of pre-Christian faiths back then that in my opinion they borrowed a great deal from, which is understandable because back then, you know, I mean, who are you going to? I mean, it's just things would happen. You get influenced, people join armies, and then, you know, maybe you're hanging out with a bunch of guys who are in the cult of Mithra and you're in the cult of Christ, and you guys start talking about stuff. And, you know, I can see how there can be cross influence between the cults that were around back then, the pre-Christian cults.
Yeah, it wasn't even a bad word back then. It just meant you were part of some special club.
Yeah, and also they were pretty small. You know, they weren't the dominant religion. I think the dominant religion was probably the Roman at that time in that area of the world. I think it was mostly Roman paganism, Roman early Christianity.
Yeah, Apollo and Saturn. I forget what they call Apollo. I forget which one is Greek or Roman, but whoever Apollo was big, and Saturn,
Apollo, Greek.
Yeah, and Saturn was big, and Jove was big. So yeah, the main, whichever ones. And yeah, whoever owns Christmas is the dominant power. It seems like that's the rule. If you're the dominant religion, then you own Christmas, and everyone else has to use your word for it.
Mm-hmm.
Apollo was Apollo in Roman. I believe that's right.
What did you say?
Apollo's the Romans kept Apollo's name the same. I believe he's one of the guys that wasn't named after a planet.
Yeah, and the Apollonians ended up taking over both the Roman Empire and Christianity in one fell swoop with Constantine. So, you know, they ended up winning, and then they won Christmas.
They won Christmas.
They won Christmas. They took it away from the Saturn followers who had their Saturnalia during that week, and it became the Apollo thing with the cult of Sol Invictus, which is basically modeled after Apollonian theology. So, you know, I guess good on them. They weren't so bad back then. It wasn't until later that it got all genocidal. Well, the Gnostics were one of the first groups that the bishops went after when they decided that they had to unify Christianity by force and do away with all the little splinter groups. The Gnostics were one of the first ones they wiped out, which is, you know, horrible, especially since the Gnostics were like the most harmless ones. They just had their little monasteries out in the desert where they meditated. So, you know, I sometimes feel a little sorry for them. They've been working to hold their own ever since.
So sorry, I'm trying to.
Yeah, that's the end of my story on that. It's like I feel sorry for the Gnostics. They're the nicest version of religion, and they really don't offend anyone else, and people keep giving them a hard time. You know, they're total pacifists for the most part.
So there's nothing coming up for Julio Thrice Greatest. I'm talking to the person in the chat. Has the same profile pic.
Yeah, well, we know the internet likes to give us a hard time on the first couple tries.
Well, I put it in twice, and the same thing happened. So I'm gonna put my name for my Twitter handle in the chat. So just send me a tweet. Julio, send me a tweet, and then I can invite you that way.
And they can tell me how badly I've slaughtered the history of Gnosticism. Yeah, that's kind of my view of it.
Yeah, I don't know that much about Gnosticism.
Well, they were kind of the original version of Christianity in a way. They had this idea that instead of God being a person who had a chair somewhere on a mountain, that it was an idealized concept of divinity.
Mm-hmm.
The king of heaven, or the Christ figure, was basically an idealized form of divinity.
Mm-hmm.
And that this meant that it would kind of do away with, or they would stop paying a lot of attention to all of these sort of temples and donating money to priesthoods and stuff. And they would all just, like a lot of modern pagans, actually, they would all just apply themselves directly to the idealized concept of divinity. And this was obviously a bit of a threat to the priesthoods, who really wanted them to stay out in the desert and shut up, because it was ruining their good, it was ruining the business of running a temple to have those guys, be known. And so they kind of got pushed out of the empire, and then they got wiped out by Christian fanatics in the 3rd century. And that's kind of what happened to them. They've been kind of an underground philosophical thing ever since. Mm-hmm. A lot of your friar organizations or your monasteries kind of run on a fairly Gnostic idea, that you spend your life concentrating and meditating and trying to be ideologically at one with the universe.
Mm-hmm.
It's very a lot of it's very pantheistic or panentheistic. That's the ones I've known. A lot of the Eastern Orthodox monks are very sort of pantheistic. They see themselves as sort of working the ground and doing their crafts, and that this helps them bring themselves into parallel with the divine nature of the universe. And so, they may have a name for it. They may say Jesus or God or whatever, but that's kind of what I've known of the ones that I've known. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I've always seen them as good guys. Like I said, at least they're not out, crushing the land under their feet. They try to live in harmony with people and nature, all that kind of good stuff.
Isn't that what we want to do? Yeah,
I mean, for the most part, they have at least from what I've understood of them, they have this ideal of the ultimate divine nature that they're trying to be in line with. So we'll see what Julio says. See what their point of view is.
Well, I mean, it's interesting. I mean, I've heard that before. I mean, it's kind of. I don't know how similar it is to the Kabbalists, but it seemed like it was kind of. It reminded me a little bit of the Kabbalah, the way that they view God. They view it. You can't directly look into the face of God. You have to sort of go. You have to kind of you can get to know it, but you can't really look upon it. So it's interesting. So I kind of thought that was kind of how the gnosis was of the Gnostics, was that they could kind of get to know. They would try to get to know God, but maybe they couldn't look directly upon it. I wasn't too sure. I wasn't too sure how they viewed it.
Yeah, it's, as far as I know, it's fairly similar. I mean, you've got your obvious details, and Kabbalism has got so many details to juggle. But yeah, it's a similar idea, and it's really not that horrendously different from animism, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
We just say, well, there's the mountain. That's the reflection of divinity on earth. There's the mountain. Go climb it. So we're one level more embedded in nature, I guess, but not ideologically opposed. We just go, hey, look, there's a mountain. The mountain can talk to you. Everyone else thinks we're crazy, but wants us for mountain guides. So, I mean, that's what it kind of comes down to. if you want to feel good about yourself, you go talk to the Kabbalists or go talk to the Gnostics and feel good about it. But if you need someone to take you out and find some food, you call a shamanist to say, go help us find some food. And we're pretty happy with that part of the role. You know, we're not so good at the making you feel good about being you, pretty much. You know, like, good luck, nature will kill you. We don't give you a lot of reassurances, but we do help you find food. So I think that's really maybe the biggest difference between animism or shamanism and Gnosticism or Kabbalism. Everything else lines up pretty good. You know, we're just willing to be more crazy to make a meal.
Mm-hmm. So now, what about what are your thoughts on language and magic? How do you think that those two things are connected, or what are your thoughts on those, or if you have any thoughts on them?
Well, for my part, sorry, I'm eating. Give me a minute. I'm gonna finish
Okay.
chewing this.
All right. What about you, Leon? Have you ever had any experiences with that, or you have any thoughts on that?
Hold on. Sorry. But in terms of language and magic, it's like you said, at least to me, each culture has their own language and their own rituals that turn to that language. I think I'm right on that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, sorry. You started I wasn't sure you were having a live stream tonight, so I was like in the middle of chewing on a sausage when the notification came up. I was, oh, Vilokin's on. Let me go see what he's up to tonight. I'm just still getting kind of adjusted.
Yeah.
But you know, for me personally, I'm more from the kind of Taoist school in general. That you know, there's this magic and this spirit that pervades everything, and we're not real big on labeling it. We're more important to label the bits of nature, just so you know which ones you can eat and which ones are poisonous and so on. But otherwise, we're not real big on labeling magical forces, except to amuse ourselves sometimes. But if you look at the Kabbalist tradition or the language tradition, the imperial traditions, you know, you've got all these streams of mysticism from India, from Egypt, from, you know, that developed in Europe, where words are a big deal, and knowing the true names of certain forces are a big deal because it's kind of a philosophy of control. And, you know, that's one way to look at it. It's a little bit scientific. And so you have some of these real powerful symbols, like another place where I disagree with a lot of magic people. You have like the serpent, the eternal serpent circling, speaks itself into existence. People think it's eating its own tail.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember its name for the life of me.
The Ouroboros?
The Ouroboros, yeah. You know, to a lot of people, see that as something consuming itself, which isn't how I see it. And some other occultists that I've known back in the day also didn't see it that way. I see it as the magical power of speaking itself into existence. Mm-hmm. And that by being able to use language and to have a name for things, you can sort of control them and make them real. So that's my preferred interpretation of the Ouroboros.
Mm-hmm.
And that, because that is so in tune with the sort of ancient Egyptian true name magic that exists in the Western occult tradition. So yeah, in addition to being an outlier when it comes to terms like black and white magic, I also interpret Ouroboros differently. Great. But that's how I see that symbol, and I think that's typical of the whole tradition of having the names for the different paths to reach up the world tree or to identify the aspects of divinity, the Godhead, and Kabbalah, and that by knowing how to describe something, you have some control over it, which is kind of what language does anyway. Mm-hmm. You know, it's kind of the magic, because once we have a shared word for something, we can now experience it through each other's minds. It's almost, it's one of the old magics. Because if I say deer and you say deer, and we know that we're talking about the same creature, we can teach each other about the deer, even when there's no deer present. That's a powerful kind of magic. So I do think language is important.
Yeah, but what do you think about like language, like to convey, like using certain words that have additional connotations to it or meanings to it? You know what I mean? So, for example, using the word cult to describe a group rather than just the word group, because cult has a negative connotation to it. I was thinking about that type of language in Magick too. What do you think about that? You know what I mean?
Not quite. Try it again. Maybe I was a little spaced.
That's okay. So like so there's certain words that we have negative associations with, right?
Yeah, okay. Sure.
So, for example, you could call, like, let's say a group of 4 people, you could call them a group of people, like that group of people over there, or you could call it a gang, or you could call it a cult. So if you said a gang of people, that might have negative connotations to it. Or if you said a cult of people, people have negative associations with that. So using those type of words in your practice, so that I don't know if I'm describing this. It's being able to use language to not only convey information, but also convey like an interpretation or an emotional interpretation of something. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, I think I understand. You're talking about basically literature and press releases.
I'm talking about, exactly. I'm talking about language.
Yeah, well, people definitely do that by knowing how certain words suggest things to other people. They put their opinion of the world out there to try to influence other people's opinion. I know people, obviously people do that every day. It's not something I try to do a lot. It's not where I'm at, but that's just not my thing. But it definitely happens, and it definitely affects the world. And I think that's definitely a kind of magic. Because you're using your will to change someone else's mind about something else.
Right.
So yeah, it's magic. A lot of times it's used malevolently, and other times it's used to write great poetry. Yeah. So you just have to sort of understand who you're listening to, which is one of the hard things.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't consider it exactly like, I mean, just personally, I wouldn't. But I definitely see it's definitely a way of manipulating and changing and influencing, which obviously that's exactly what magic is. But it's just kind of like on a different, because everyone does influence people. They do try to manipulate people. We do try to sway people to do our will. I mean, all the time, salespeople do it. If you're out on a date, or you do it if you're writing a paper for school, you're doing. I mean, we do it in our daily lives all the time. So it's really funny when people, try to say like they don't do it. It's like, no, you do. You just don't recognize it as such,
Or they're trying to hide how much they're doing it.
Right, exactly. Or maybe they just they just have a blind spot there. They on purpose sort of, they want to separate themselves from it, and they don't want to admit that, they are trying to influence people to see things the way that they see it, or manipulate them somehow.
I think that's, if I could be all pithy, that's kind of putting the communing in communication. Every time you try to share information with somebody, you're trying to have a communal experience with them and share what you think or what you believe or what you've perceived with them. And that's just even having the same word for even learning the same word for something allows you to do that. Some people take it to an extreme or to a level of malevolence and manipulation. And so everyone just kind of has to draw their own line as to how far it's ethical to go with that. So obviously, some people have no limit. The more bullshit they can spread on the more people to get the more short-term benefit for themselves, the happier they are.
Right.
You know,
Right.
and not even to achieve anything, just to do it for the sake of doing it. I mean, it becomes kind of, it can get twisted,
Mm-hmm.
just to try to prove they have that power.
Yeah.
You know, and then you just have to decide, okay, at what point do I oppose that process? From my point of view, it's okay, people do this stuff all the time, like you said. And to some extent, they're just trying to share a worldview with the people around them so they can kind of understand what we're all living through. There becomes a point where it's malevolent and has to be opposed.
Yeah. And I noticed too that it seems like people, like, they're writing articles about things and writing. Some journalists are starting to do this, where what they'll do is, and we even see it with the Me Too movement, where people will make accusations without really without really any proof, and the accusation itself holds a great deal of weight nowadays. So it's kind of scary, but like back in the 80s, during the early satanic panic, it was all accusation. And then they started conducting an investigation around these allegations, but the evidence just wasn't there. And still people held on to, quote unquote, believe the children, you know, so that people really clung to the accusations and they didn't care about the evidence. And I actually see that happening now, not on a grand scale, but on a small scale, where I see people being accused of things, but the proof, the evidence for it is never given. So it's like they're painting people with a brush and labeling them such and such, but nobody's asking for proof. At least it's not. I think more people need to challenge it. Say, why are you saying this about this person? What proof do you have? And then obviously, if they show you proof, then yeah, okay, then that's really supporting your argument. Or if they have other evidence to support the accusation, but just making the accusation itself should not be enough. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think a lot of them are just basically literally trolling in the fishing sense. They're basically fishing for people who will believe anything they're told,
mm-hmm.
because those are the same people that will give them free money,
mm-hmm.
you know, just because they're told to. And so they're using magic in a very parasitic kind of way. They're using their words to suck the life out of people who don't know any better. And, you know, that's your see TV people.
Mm-hmm.
They're just looking for vulnerable, influenceable people. And it's naughty. It's very naughty.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I start to say things that scare people, because I don't think that should be tolerated in society, but it's really hard to separate it out from other forms of expression that have to be protected.
Well, you know what? I mean, the way I feel about it is, I think that the accusation is there. I think that if you accuse somebody of something, I don't see a problem with that, really, you know. But it's kind of like, if you're going to believe an accusation based upon just the accusation itself, I'm actually now thinking less of you rather than the person making the accusation. Does that make sense?
Well, yeah, because they're taking advantage of vulnerable people. And so,
exactly.
You know, their followers are vulnerable people. So you definitely wouldn't want to count on them for anything, because they're going to go wherever somebody shouts the loudest. And every generation has a certain percentage of vulnerable people who just want something to latch onto so they don't have to think for themselves.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah. And
that's not who you want standing next to you when there's an emergency.
Right, exactly. Yeah, when they start pointing at people to throw into the gulag, you don't want to be close to them. Yeah.
Yeah, because they'll join any mob that seems to be going in a particular direction. So
exactly.
They can be dangerous, and
yeah.
they don't. You know,
mm-hmm.
and they decide to some extent with their votes what happens in schools and what other people get to learn. And
yeah, that is scary because they do just so easily fall in line with that sort of mentality. You know, it is kind of scary. You know, they do just fall into it for whatever reason. It is kind of scary that you know, like we look, like for myself, I always look back in history, like especially during the rise of the Nazi Party. You know, it's like, why didn't people do something or say something during the rise of the Nazi Party? You know, and at the time, the Nazi Party was considered to be, you know, the Workers' Party. It was like the up and coming, you know, they were going to fight for the common man, the common German worker, and you know, there was also a sense of nationalism and socialism in it. And, you know, we look back on it going, how did they do that? Why did they allow that group to rise? And I mean, to me, that's more fascinating than just the rise of the Nazi Party itself, but why it was allowed to grow and expand in that particular culture. Because, you know, there must have been some warning signs. Like Kristallnacht would be a really good example of that. But, you know, I'm sure there's other things that came up where people just, you know, I don't know if they turned a blind eye to it or they just accepted it or what.
yeah, I think
Propaganda, mostly.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of hindsight principle going on. You know, like you said, something can start out looking like a certain thing, and then once a person or a group gets a certain level of momentum and power going, they can follow their insanity as far as it goes. You know, suddenly it's Jim Jones and the Kool-Aid, and you look back and say, how could those guys follow that madman? But he wasn't talking like that when he started. You know, it's kind of like a descent in small increments. It's certainly the case when you look at, well, why not? We're on the internet. When you look at the Nazi Party, nobody knew how horrible, insane a lot of the leaders were. You know, the public in Germany didn't fully appreciate how, you know, insane and destructive the leadership was until, you know, it was kind of too late to do anything about it, or the war had already happened and was over, and they said, oh my God, look what was going on in these secret places. And how it's amazing is how few people have to be truly complicit to keep that momentum going. An awful lot of people can just say, yeah, I want to be part of a group. We feel good about being us. And meanwhile, you can be supporting something that has really gone rotten at the core. And it often starts from legitimate grievances or legitimate expressions of social bonding. And that's really hard to break because people are so hard up to be part of a group and to be valued as part of a group. You know, we're social creatures. So there's always going to be this narrow line between being a loyal member of the group and becoming, you know, a death camp guard. There really is a fine line there.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and I mean, you know, if you're in the military, it's kind of like, well, what you do is you do whatever you're told to do, you know, and you're not supposed to think about it. You're supposed to just do it.
Yeah, that's like you signed up to have a certain amount of faith in your leaders, and to punish, you know, and it's even a more fine line for those people, because if they show any lack of faith or if they show any resistance to the status quo or what the orders are, they are immediately face the worst repercussions. Whereas someone who's just out there in the world and kind of not doing much, they can have their own doubts and they can say, oh, well, I would never do that. And it's never tested, so you can never be sure. They're just going with wherever the flow is going. And so I don't know, that just happens. And I think we're going to be, for an evolutionary time scale, we will continue to have that problem with humanity because people place such a high value on loyalty that we're always going to have people who are doubtful of things that are done in the name of loyalty to keep humanity from tearing itself apart and tearing the environment apart.
Yeah.
that's something we just have to admit we are always going to face. There's always going to be another Jim Jones or David Koresh or Stalin. There's always going to be another, you know, name, who are going to tell people that in order to be part of the group, they have to accept this little incremental step into madness.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, until they come up with an absolute cure for psychosis, we're going to continue to face those people because they're very confident. Crazy psychotics are very confident in their conclusions.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think there would be any way to completely eliminate that, because I think it's kind of part of our social structure, you know, and we would have to become incredibly dependent for X amount of generations for that to completely weed out, because we are social creatures, you know, and we are influenced by our social group, you know, you know, hopefully the social group that you're a part of is something that, you know, hopefully if you do see them kind of starting to take, you know, maybe a little more southerly direction than you're comfortable with, hopefully you would leave that group. But some people might not, just out of fear of losing their social group, their social structure, you know. That's the scary part.
Yeah, because people get so invested in the group that they'll say anything just to show that they're loyal to the group. I mean, I think that's where almost all, you know, other than the true psychotics, I think that's where you get fundamental ideologies. Just people just get so wrapped up in being loyal that they'll say anything, no matter how stupid it is. They'll say, "Oh, the Earth's only 6,000 years old because that's my faith."
Mm-hmm.
You know,
or the Earth is flat.
Or the Earth is flat. Yeah, whatever. They'll say anything, and what they're not really saying. They say they believe that, but they're not saying they believe that because they believe it. They're saying they believe that to prove how loyal they are to their group.
Right. Yeah.
And I think that's what we're hearing from people like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you, because I wonder, like, if people who do claim to be part of, you know, the flat Earth movement, if they honestly do believe it, or if they're just kind of going along with it, you know, makes you wonder.
Well, I think in that particular case,
Hey, Leon.
Yeah.
Leon, would you mind muting your mic, and then if you want to talk, just unmute it?
Yeah.
Because we hear you like moving around and zipping and unzipping things.
Oh, sorry. I was just putting up. I was putting my stuff away, but sure.
That's okay. That's okay. Just mute your mic when you're not talking, please.
All right.
Thanks. Yeah. So go ahead.
I was saying the flat Earth people. I think a lot of these kind of trollish modern versions of that are started by people who absolutely positively know they're trolling. They're like 4chan assholes who sit there and go, "Oh, what can we make people believe this week?" But I think once it gets out there and gets a certain amount of momentum, you start to get those vulnerable people who are easily influenced, who might actually start to believe it and are just genuinely too ignorant to know better. But I think most of the time, the people who start that kind of thing are doing it just to prove they can do it, just because that's how they are. They're just literally trolls. And I think most of your fundamental religion and revolutionary groups are basically people like that. And, you know, like I said, that's a fight we're going to keep having every generation for the foreseeable future. There'll always be some. The trick is not to let them control the majority. You know, when we've got people like the flat earthers and the young earth creationists, if all those people are all separate little stupid groups and they're each just playing in their own arena for their own fun or their own need, then none of them are powerful enough to really wreck civilization or redirect the development of civilization. It's when you get too many of them under one banner that it gets dangerous. You know, this is why I and a lot of doubters, skeptics, will ignore a lot of the things. We'll ignore certain things and but we'll continue to say, but this one umbrella group is worth opposing wherever they are, just because they draw so many vulnerable people in that they can actually do some real damage, not just to their followers, but to everybody at large. And so I think that's why you got people who are out there saying, time to stop this big umbrella group.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think that there are some groups that I mean, you can kind of listen to them after a while. I there's all kinds of various circles that I include myself into on YouTube, and there's some circles of people that I just don't understand the appeal. I don't understand why these people enjoy doing what they do, but that's what they enjoy doing. And then there's other groups where I agree with, a percentage of what they're saying, but I don't necessarily agree with everything that they have to say. And then there's other groups that I can really resonate with, and I go, oh yeah, I can completely see that, and I completely relate to that. So I mean, it's very interesting how much exposure you have even just within YouTube of all these various opinions, and I find it fascinating. I enjoy having the ability to listen to people who I disagree with, and then people who I do agree with, and then some people who might challenge my particular opinions or my beliefs. And I think it's good. I think it's a benefit.
I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think when it's people comparing their individual perceptions, their unique perceptions, looking for common ground with other people, there's a healthy phase to that, and then there's the snowball phase where neurosis gets out of control.
Yeah.
What you find a lot of time, just thinking of history, just an idea to think about, is that you tend to get more of that when societies are more comfortable and more well catered, because they got nothing better to do and they're not having to work very hard to survive. You don't get that from frontiers people. They may have a few peculiar notions, but it's nothing that's going to keep them from getting dinner, But when you've got, the whole Roman Empire with huge welfare plans and nobody really has to work because they've got slaves, they can afford to be as crazy as they can think of. And in a lot of modern society, I think that's part of what's going on. You've got a whole bunch of people who don't have to work very hard or be very plugged into reality in order to survive. And so that leaves an enormous amount of play, enormous amount of room for being neurotic, or for being part of a group just to be part of a group, even if it's counterproductive. So in a way, it speaks to the wealth of the empire. China is famous for going through cycles of that, where, sort of lazy, heavily indulged bureaucracies build up to the point where they just collapse the whole Chinese empire, and then it picks itself back up from pieces and goes back to more practical philosophies. And over a period of centuries, it goes through the same cycle. And, in other parts of the world, you see that. And sometimes they got to move the capital because the old capital is like so trashed that you have to go from that empire, like the Western Empire, it had the capital in Mesopotamia that kind of got trashed and then, so you had the capital in Egypt, then you had the capital in Greece, then you had the capital in Rome, then you had the capital maybe in Antwerp, Paris, and London, and jumped over the ocean to America. And it's like every few centuries, the decadence gets so bad, the whole thing just tears itself apart and has to be, taken over by another location altogether, just to kind of cleanse its identity. And that's kind of a social cycle.
Yeah, but that sounds like a location and not an opinion. You know what I mean?
The issues are different each time, But I think a lot of the issues, even though they're different issues, they come from the same thing of people get to a certain level of wealth and luxury, and they can afford to let random issue become the issue of the day. until they become so impractical and neurotic that they can no longer make a living. And then you get a collapse, you get an imperial collapse. And then some other, more hardworking assholes from next door who were used to be the barbarians become the new rulers because they're a little more reality based. That's just a set cycle that I've noticed in history.
Mm-hmm.
So, the thing is, like with the Western Empire, well, it's already gone across the Atlantic. Where does it go next? If we let this one go to hell, it's already worldwide luxury. If it collapses again, is there anywhere to restart it from, and where is that?
Mm-hmm.
The next couple of centuries, we may find that out.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it'll rise up again somewhere. I mean, that's just how it is. When that does happen, it just pops up somewhere else. Somewhere it starts to become, the hub of the world or the intellectual center of the world or whatever. It's just, you never know where it's going to pop up again.
Yeah, nobody likes to think that will happen to them, that they'll be part of the part that collapses. But kind of like you said before, it goes in small pieces until it's gone so crazy that people are going, how did we get here?
Right.
What did we talk ourselves into?
Sadly, I think we're nearing that point.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, stock market is nearing the point of collapse. If we're not already collapsing.
Yeah, I don't think we've collapsed yet. I mean, human beings are incredibly resilient. I mean, you can have war. Okay, you'll get through war. You can have a famine. You'll get through famine. You can have a plague, disease. You're going to get through those. I think when you have multiple ones of those, like if you have a war and a famine, or you have a famine and disease, or you have, you know what I mean? If you have stuff that piles on top of each other, that's when your civilization is going to collapse, because there's no way you can control it all. And then maybe even you have barbarians coming in, or not, maybe I shouldn't say barbarians, but you have another culture, another people, or another army, whatever, coming in, then you're really fucked, because there's nothing you can do. If you have just one of those things, you can probably survive it. But I think when you have a couple of those pile on top of each other, that's when your civilization is about to collapse. You
get that perfect storm effect. The perfect confluence of bad things, which is
exactly.
Mediterraneans. Oh, and Julio said they sent you another message from Twitter. But there's a video that I've watched a couple of times on YouTube, which is a historian talking about the collapse of Mediterranean civilization in like the 12th century BC. Mm-hmm. And he kind of pointed to what we know from the evidence of, there were invaders. At the same time, there was bad weather. At the same time, there was other issues. And basically a whole international alliance of developing societies all basically bit it at the same time all around the Eastern Mediterranean. And there wasn't any one thing that caused it. It was just the perfect storm of bad luck.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah, it's when you have that perfect storm that your civilization's.
Oh,
hey, how's it going?
Oh, it's fine. How are you?
Doing all right. So, welcome, Julio. Am I pronouncing your name correctly?
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. So, this is I'm Hellbound Heathen, and Leon.
Hello.
And Anime.
Hi.
Hello.
So what brought you to my chat?
Preaching the word of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ.
Uh-huh.
That was just joking, by the way. I need to get your attention.
Okay. Well, you got my attention.
Do you understand me by any chance, or does my accent get in the way of?
Your accent's not any more than mine is.
Yeah, I understand you. Leon, do you understand him?
Yeah, yes I do.
Yeah, we understand you. Do you understand us?
Yeah, okay, yes.
All right. Well, I mean,
So,
sometimes like somebody's mic can be really low or scratchy or anything. So,
mm,
I'm hearing a
uh,
lot of
so um, what I heard you guys talking about Gnosticism. Could we briefly talk about that, or do we, um, talk about some other thing?
I don't mind. What about you, Anast?
I would love to hear his point of view on it. I mean, I gave what I've learned or seen in my life, but someone else who's more close to it might have something cool to say.
Okay. And what about you, Leon? Do you mind?
No problem with it. Go on.
Okay. All right. So go for it. So why don't you give us a summation of what Gnosticism is, or what it is from your perspective?
Well, I tend to follow the Manichaean path. Uh, it's basically the religion that was founded by Prophet Mani, and his religion was often called the religion of light. Uh, it was basically the main competitor for Christianity for I don't know how many centuries, but as of now, that's basically the main religion that the one that speaks to me the most.
And when you say Prophet Manning, what time period is this?
Uh, I think let me just check here some uh, a book I have here on him.
If somebody's
It's
correcting me, it's man. Is it Manichean?
well, I heard it say Manichaean. Um, Let me just give me a sec.
Okay, sure.
I think it's a hard K sound.
Is it?
I think. My Hebrew is not good, but I think in that case that's a hard consonant sound.
I mean, there are different ways to say it. There's also Maniki, um, Maninaye. Uh, okay, I think I have it right here. Um,
It's kind of like the Enochian.
Hmm.
For some reason, in the English alphabet, it was written as a CH and pronounced like a K, and English is crazy like that.
Yeah. I mean, I mispronounced it. Because I thought he said Manning. So that was
yeah, Manning. That's his name.
okay. Well, anyhow, so what century is this prophet from?
Well, it's. I think it was somewhere between the second century, more or less. Oh, excuse me for a sec.
Second century Common Era or before the Common Era? Oh, okay. Well, when he gets back, because I've never heard about that. So I'm always fascinated to learn stuff I don't know.
Yeah. Let me just check it right here.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I wasn't really prepared for having the chat, so it was all of a sudden. So I got really somewhat nervous here,
Oh, okay.
or else I would have prepared a little bit better. Oh, okay. Okay. It was founded in the third century.
Third century.
Yeah.
Okay.
Um, like uh, when he was born, it was basically it's heavily mythicized. His father, whose name was Patik, he had a vision of an angel, or he heard a voice, and it told him that he shouldn't he shouldn't eat any meat, he shouldn't touch any woman, and he should abstain from all earthly pleasures. Uh, that's how it starts in the book, at least. Among other things, he belonged to a sect of Proto-Mandians, which is the Elkasites or Abionites. I'm not really sure which one of those, because I've heard like rumors um, that it could have been one or the other. I'm not really 100% sure on that one. Uh, but besides that, the religion sadly died out. But I'm actually trying to reconstruct it.
And what about it appeals to you the most?
Oh, okay. It's the syncretic elements. It combined paganism, it combined Christianity, it combined Buddhism, even Greek polytheism. It's basically how it works all well together. And the rituals, the prayers. I also like the poetry on many of the holy books.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's mainly it basically on regarding Mani and Manichaeism. He died a horrible death, I guess. Um, uh, Almost similar to Jesus, I guess, in a certain way. What else I can? What are there any other questions you have?
No, I was just curious what it was and what the appeal for you was to it, and just a little bit about it.
Mhm.
So it started in the 3rd century. All right.
Yeah.
And it pretty much kind of died out, but you were kind of in the process of trying to research it and sort of resurrect it. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And so he was considered a prophet.
Yes.
Okay. And then he died. And he died similar to how Jesus is recorded to have died.
Yeah. More or less. I mean, he got sentenced by King Shapur the First, and well, he died in prison, but his body was heavily mutilated in order to be sure that he wouldn't come back to life after a couple of days. Um, he did not actually. He did not come to life. He remained dead.
Mm-hmm.
But
Now, was he crucified in jail?
no. For example, he was chained up, but his body was heavily mutilated, and his head was decapitated, and well, it was pretty gruesome in the way his body was treated.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions?
I don't have any other questions.
Like I said, I wasn't prepared for having this chat, so if this is actually my first time.
Oh, okay. Well, that's all right. What were you prepared to talk about? I mean, I know I invited you on, but
Yeah, I mean, it started off as a joke, preaching, and not really meant to go this far, but it's nice having to experience it at least for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
But if you guys want, and I can stick around and comment on random things or on whichever.
No, that's okay. No, I mean, I don't mind having you here. I'm just curious. So now, what exactly is a Gnostic from your perspective?
Well, Gnostic, it actually has to do with okay, I'm sorry. Let me just gather my thoughts here.
Okay, go ahead, take your time. So
Yeah,
we'll
it means
think of some other questions.
well, it has to do with knowledge.
Okay.
I personally believe that not through faith but through knowledge, you'd be willing to go to what's equivalent to a Manichaean heaven or nirvana, whichever word you prefer.
Mm-hmm.
Personally, I reject faith as a means for for attaining salvation. I'd rather, I have no objections when it comes to learning from different religious sources, be it the Bhagavad Gita or the Hamaval, any other religious book, as long as I can obtain what is equivalent to a sort of gnosis. It brings me it brings me closer to basically God or salvation.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So yeah, that's my view. Not saying it as something set in stone or as a matter of fact. Just this is just my beliefs, not really here to preach or anything like that.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, I was curious about that. I mean, obviously I've heard about Gnosticism before, but I never really was interested in it, so I never really studied it. I mean, if anything, I've seen the word pop up every so often as I'm reading subjects that interest me. So I've kind of had a sort of a very rudimentary understanding of what it might be, but I don't know exactly what it is. So that's why I was curious, since you have a background in it, just to ask you some questions about it. So I don't think you're here to preach. I mean, obviously, if you were here to preach, you would have done so already. So I know you were joking around in my chat.
Yeah.
But I mean, I saw that there, and I thought, oh, this is some religious person here, and so that's why I kind of poked you and prodded you a little bit to find out more. So yeah, I mean, I don't think preaching is effective, so
Yeah,
I mean,
me neither.
it's not even that people are actually just trying to preach as much as it is what they want to say is that my path, my belief is true and yours is wrong. That's really what they want to say.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And obviously I don't believe that, because I am open to other people's beliefs and I enjoy hearing about them. And for me to make a judgment, like to say that my practice is correct and your practice is incorrect, I don't have the grounds for that. I mean, that could be my opinion, but for the fact of the matter is, if you are following the path that fits for you, then that by default it is right for you. Since I follow a different path and I don't follow yours, obviously the path that I follow is the one that's correct for me. So it's just a different way of looking at it. It's not like there's one shoe that fits everyone. It's more like, no, there's multiple shoes that fit different people. That's how I look at religion, or even spirituality for that matter.
This reminds me that there's actually some other groups that are trying to revive Manichaeism, and they've incorporated other other religions, like the Atenist, the religion that was founded by the pharaoh Akhenaten.
I don't know anything about it, but okay.
I'm sorry?
I don't know anything about that, but okay.
But yeah, it was basically this pharaoh that tried to establish an early monotheism. I'm sorry, I just can't say the word correctly right now. But basically, this pharaoh tried to establish the first a religion that worships one single god in Egypt. It lasted only through his lifetime. But okay, here's the thing. The modern Manichaeans are basically trying to incorporate other people that worship those other that are okay. Let me just try to gather my thoughts again.
Okay.
They're trying to gather people who believe that are trying to reconstruct Athenism, as well as some other faiths, and trying to incorporate them, but they're doing so in a way that is saying my way of worshiping is the only right way. But if you are in any other way associated with paganism, with Catholicism, with Protestantism, with any other religion besides their own, you're condemned to hell. That's the way that they're going with, and I'm trying to distance myself from those other beliefs. Um, they're really deplorable people that really hateful
Yeah.
and are basically trying to they're basically changing the words of what remains of the ancient text. They're trying to, well, basically what I find to be the most heinous of things. Not only that, there are people who are proclaiming themselves to be Jesus, to be Buddha, to be all kinds of things, which I don't personally believe. I don't believe anyone can have that sort of divine status right here on Earth or anything of the sort. But here we have a group of people that are trying to proclaim themselves uh, to a status similar to well, basically the reincarnation of Jesus or Buddha or whatever, and they're trying to emotionally manipulate all sorts of people. And well, basically, it's we all know how that could end, um, involving Kool-Aid and all sorts of stuff. But yeah, it's I'm trying to distance myself from those other guys, trying to also establish my own set of practices and all that, and probably eventually restart the church.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of Christians who distance themselves from those people, even themselves,
Mhm.
because I've met some of them, and it's like they're just into doing their own thing, and if they convert somebody to God, that's great, but that's not, they're not
Mhm.
going to try to intimidate people or trick people or threaten them with hell and all this stuff, and I
Mhm.
mean, they'll be blunt about it, but that's not their purpose. And it seems like a lot of the, like at least most of the people that I respond to in my videos, they're pretty much, they're just kind of like they're the small percentage. They're the obnoxious ones. They're the ones who think that their religion is it and period, and they don't have tolerance
Mhm.
for other people. So I understand that those people are the extreme. They're not the common.
Mhm. Some even can't help themselves. They grew up that way. Uh, they can't break out of that indoctrinated mindset.
Yeah. Yeah,
But
and
huh?
I think that then they begin to structure their worship service and their temples and their community in the sense of keeping those people inside. Like,
Mhm.
oftentimes the videos that I do, they
Mhm.
don't want people to research stuff because they don't want them to quote unquote open up doors, and
Yeah.
let evil spirits in, because what they're really doing is they don't want people to look into this stuff for themselves. So the people find out the truth that, oh, wow, so pagans, Satanists, and occultists aren't
Mhm.
that bad. They're not awful people running around,
The
kidnapping babies,
the
killing them.
the doors that they're talking about are really just it's a metaphor, their metaphor for finding out that this is all bullshit.
Mhm.
Right, exactly. Yeah. I mean, yeah, because the idea of opening a door is making a connection to something that wasn't that it's connecting two things. It's being a doorway to another thought or doorway to another belief. So yeah, I mean, for myself, I'm confident in my own path, my own beliefs. So I don't mind listening to people like Julio or other people who have different beliefs than my own, because when I hear about it and I interact with them, I'm not challenged by it. It doesn't challenge my beliefs. It's interesting to find out more about it, but I don't feel threatened, and I don't feel like I have to convert them to my way of thinking, because that's just not what I do.
Mhm.
We get some good mileage out of it.
Huh? What was
We
that?
we get some good mileage out of these very different wrong perceptions that we have.
Right.
our discussions alone have brought out a lot of stuff where two people can say, I like what you do. You seem like a good person, but got all these different ways of seeing something. And I think we all can grow from that.
Mm.
Yeah, definitely. And it's the way that you look at the situation. You can look at the situation as you can look at all the differences if you want, or you can find commonality, and you can find if any spiritual belief or religious belief, if you look deep enough, you're going to find similarities to your own, but you just actually have to look for them.
That's true. I try to have dialogues with people of different faiths. I'm actually a moderator in a community called Philosophy of Religion in Google Plus, and I try to interact with people of different faiths every day, basically. It's really interesting, but it sometimes gets more or less annoying considering that there are a couple of people that try to preach to, it's basically the usual that you see with the more mainstream religions, and also try to train you with all sorts of things related to hell, or even something worse than hell. I met this guy that was actually promising me, like, he was saying to me that I would die an early death if I didn't believe in Jesus, which is, yeah. I never heard that sort of threat before, but whatever. It doesn't affect me in any sort of way.
Now, what about the concept of evil or Satan or hell in your belief system of Gnosticism? How do they approach that situation, or how do they view it?
Well, basically, it starts with you could say the Manichaean Genesis. It says that everything was created when good and evil mixed together. And right now, the world is basically a combination of both good and evil. Uh, and we are actually in a state, and this is not making a statement of, like I said before, I'm not saying this is a matter of fact. I'm just trying to explain like the beliefs behind, like the beliefs.
Right.
But the idea is that we are in a state of constant reincarnation until we eventually manage to separate our inner selves, like the light, from matter. And that happens through, basically through meditation, through the study of religious texts, through prayer. There is a hell, but the idea of hell is really different. The idea is that we are already living in a state of, hell, basically. The material world, it's basically a flawed and imperfect world, not the true state of not our true state. That's basically the idea. Yes, there is a devil, but it's sometimes used in a different way, not like we're used to in Christianity. Like, for example, in Christianity, we see the devil as this sort of evil boogeyman that's basically everywhere, and if you don't behave, he'll get you or something. Or in certain cases, forget about the devil, you have to worry about God. In Manichaeism, it's basically, it solves the problem of evil by limiting God. God is not all powerful. God is not all knowing, but he is like an ally. He's stuck in an a semi-eternal struggle, until eventually light and matter separates, and And basically, well, yeah, we would. That would be it. Basically, there's nothing. There's nothing else. Besides
So
that.
okay, so you mentioned earlier the Manichaean Gnosticism. Who, how do they view the world? They view the world as kind of like hell, or
Well, yeah, think of it like Buddhism. Buddhists tend to think like uh, the world is not perfect, um, and they believe they have a certain view regarding the world, and they believe that to achieve a state of nirvana or a, or paradise or whatever you want to call it, you have to behave in a certain way in order to reach that perfect state.
well, that's okay. I mean, I'm not. Yeah, I'm just wondering how your belief system, how
Hmm.
because you mentioned that that Manichaean Gnostics believe that the world is hell. So I'm just wondering how. I mean, is that accurate? Did I understand
Yes.
that correctly? Okay.
Yep. It's
So
basically it's the idea that we're in constant suffering, or in some way we are suffering. Maybe not now, but eventually we will be. And basically, it takes the idea that God is not the creator of the world, is not the creator of anything. We just happen to be here by some sort of you could call it a cosmic accident. Um, and but yeah, it's basically that's it basically.
okay. And so do they believe in like the concept of an afterlife, like a heaven?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
They also tend to use words like gods. Well, they refer to humans sometimes as gods because we have, since basically good and evil is mixed. The idea behind this that we have a little bit of God within us. Therefore, there are gods everywhere, either in humans or animals. That's basically the idea behind it.
Okay. Interesting.
Not literal gods, but because we have God within us. That's what I'm trying to say.
I see. I see. Okay. Do Animist or Leon, do you have a question for him or any questions?
Yep. It always takes me some time to unmute myself.
Oh, okay.
there's always a short delay. No, that sounds very similar to what I've heard of from Gnostics before. That's very much in keeping with the central lands version of ascetic enlightenment, where they try to deny the self, and they believe that life is a struggle within the self to try to purify, and that hopefully you can. The only word I can think of is, but by being good at purifying yourself or denying distractions, what in India they call a right-hand path, the path of self-denial and self-purification, that you can then have a perception of the total cosmic wisdom. What Julio is saying is perfectly in keeping with that. I didn't hear him say anything that was contrary to what a lot of very good people have done to try to improve themselves without hurting other people. So it makes total sense to me. It's not exactly what I do. I do a little bit of that, but it's not exactly what I do, but I respect it, and I respect the intention of it. So I'd say, more power to you. I hope that works out well for you.
Thanks.
Yeah, because, and that attitude is something that you'll find in a lot of modern European and American pagans. A lot of them have a very similar idea of trying to purify their perception or refine their perception so that they can be more ethical in the way they treat other people, treat the environment. So, yeah, I'd say, good on you. I hope you're able to go far with that, because that's something you can do your whole life and always get a little better, a little better. Just
Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
Me personally, I'm involved in some more raw things, and And because of my life experience and my purpose in life, I can be a little more nasty than that, but only if it's keep a person from hurting an innocent person or oppressing someone. And so sometimes I think you need a mix. I think you need some people that are really trying to be the ideal, and you need some people that have absolutely no problem with getting their hands dirty in order to protect that endeavor. And so that's why you need police. You know, somebody's got to be willing to do the dirty job so that other people can go after the greatest purity. And I'm okay with that personally. I have no problem with getting in front of trouble so that it doesn't hit somebody else. I encourage everyone to be the best themselves that they can be. For the Gnostics, that means drawing wisdom from a lot of places.
Leon, did you have any questions for him?
Only one. So it sounds like it's a path of peace, and I use peace in the realist term of the word. Now, if I say that Islam is a religion of peace, it's an actual religion that teaches nonviolence and harmony, right?
Well, yeah, it basically takes influences from Jainism. You cannot harm any sort of living creature, be it an ant, a dog, or a cat, a fellow human being. Basically, strict non-violence. That's a pretty big important aspect of the faith.
Yeah, Jainism is kind of radical pacifism.
Yes.
They're really embracing the whole go through life without causing trouble kind of a thing. In fact, as Sam Harris, for you skeptics, Sam Harris once pointed out when he was comparing which religions were more dangerous to the world than others, he pointed out when he was comparing certain imperial religions, and he said, then you look at a religion like Jainism, and the more fanatical, the more sort of crazy dedicated they get to their path, the less dangerous they are.
It's like the exact opposite.
If we had a world full of radical Jainists, we'd actually be way better off. Whereas a lot of other religions, when you get more fanatical or literal with it, they become more dangerous. But these guys, I'm pretty sure Jainists are the ones who don't want to pollute the air, the water, or the soil with their bodies, so they just leave their dead up on a rock and let the vultures consume it and recycle back into nature. Because they don't even want, when they pass away, they don't even want their corpse to pollute a stream, so they put it somewhere that it just gets recycled back into nature that way. I think that's the Jainists. And there's like a couple 100 million of these people. I mean, India is a very populous place.
What I find most interesting is that they, as a religion, survived while Manichaeism did not. And they basically held similar beliefs to many of the mainstream religions. But I think, but I think that that's what actually condemned them in the eyes of society, because they have so many different ideas into one religion that basically made them like traitors or something evil, like I don't know. It was the same everywhere. In India, they got rejected. In China, the same. But the thing is that they also did not believe in harming anything. But meanwhile, they die out eventually. But people like the Jains, they thrive for some reason. I just don't get it. Why did one religion survive, but another one that held so many beliefs of so many different religions did not?
Yeah. Well, there's probably a lot of religions that came up and fell that we don't know anything about. Same with civilizations. There's probably many civilizations that rose up and fell that we've never heard about. Then there's Yeah, and there's infinite people who have come and gone. We don't hear about them. I mean, we don't like to admit it, but the ones who survive are the ones that actually flourish and thrive and grow and then begin
I
to.
mean, it was the main competitor of Catholicism, which was, and I'm pretty sure Catholicism got some ideas out of Manichaeism. Um, but I don't know. It's just I just find it so strange in my opinion. A religion that, in my opinion, took so many good things from different religions ended up eventually disappearing into obscurity, with barely enough text that survive to this day.
Yep. Well, it does happen though.
Hmm.
Yep, it does happen.
Yeah,
Yeah.
a lot of times it's a matter of luck of whether one of these fairly pacifistic or Gnostic philosophies springs up, who they're next to, you know, because you could, when someone comes up like you were talking about Mani, well, he was not lucky in when he was born and where he was born, whereas someone who is in, you know, in the area where the Jainists are, okay, they were fairly lucky in where they started and, you know, who their neighbors were. Their neighbors were tolerant of differences. So I think that explains a lot of it. It's just pure luck.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's funny if you try to reverse engineer history, it's like, you know, you can see from the point you are now and then look back in history, and farther back you go, the more, you know, miraculous it might seem that such and such survived all these thousands of years, but that's because you're reverse engineering it. You know, that's just the way it is. If you tried to like predict, like, okay, so what is Catholicism and Christianity going to look like in the next 2,000 years? You know, you know, you could guess, but you would never know until you actually see what happens in 2,000 years. But if you know, it's like the concept of the creation of the world, of the creation of the universe. It's like they talk about how if at the I don't know whose mic is scratchy, but can you mute it, please?
Is it mine?
I think it might be yours, Julio. Yeah.
Oh, it might be the AC.
Yeah. That's okay. Just mute your mic when other people are talking, please.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
That's all right.
Let me just.
So you know, so it's like they say okay, well, if the Big Bang, the expansion of the universe was off like by a milli, you know, like half a some outrageous number, some very, very small number, it's like, yeah, the universe would look completely different. It's like, yes, it would, but it didn't, you know. It's kind of like all the things that led to where the universe are today. It's reverse engineering. So of course it looks really amazing.
Yeah, it's kind of like, I'm into physics, and I've come up against that exact same question where the theologians get in, try to talk science badly, and they talk about the fine tuning of the universe by looking backwards. And it's kind of the same thing as the value of pi. It's like, okay, pi is this irrational number where this simple relationship between how far it is across the circle to how far it is around is incredibly precise and incredibly impossible to predict or compute. But the truth is, it's just how far it happens to be, and it doesn't have to conform to our idea of neatness. You know, we live in a messy universe with some messy quantities that float around, and we have to adapt to that. It doesn't have to adapt to us. I don't know. That was just my throw-in point there.
Yeah.
You know, and the same thing is true of philosophy. You know, you have to adapt yourself to the nature you find yourself in, because that's what's actually real. You know, it's kind of like we were talking about cults earlier, or, you know, crazy people earlier. People who are trying to say the universe should conform to their idea of what's neat are insane, because the universe is inherently messy. So deal.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, hey, Julio. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. This is a hangout that I have every Wednesday for just my Patreon. So
Okay.
yeah.
Well, I'll see you some other time then.
All right, I'll see. I have on Saturdays. I have a regular hangout where everybody can join in. You're welcome to
Okay.
Saturday.
Well, have a good night.
All right, Julio. Take care.
That was great to meet you. Thanks for showing up. You brought some interesting points in.
Likewise.
All right. All right. Well, cool.
Yeah, you know, sometimes we meet somebody interesting. It's not always a troll.
Oh yeah, no. I mean, he was nice about it. That's why I was saying he wasn't really trolling, you know, because there's a difference, you know.
It's nice. It's also nice to be able to encourage somebody once in a while who's still sorting out their path.
Yeah, and I don't mind, like, if, you know, like, let's say Bill Schnoebelen or John Pounders or David Carrico or
like any
Thomas,
of those guys would dare to step in with us.
right, or Thomas Dunn or Jared Taylor or any of those guys, any of the people who I make responses to, any of the videos, they're not blocked on my channel.
Right,
so
they just know better than to bring that much bullshit into an environment full of people who know better.
Right. Yeah. But I mean, if they ever came on and say, hey, I want to talk about the video you made, or I want to talk to you about whatever, I happily invite them on, you know. I don't, you know, I'm not here to silence them, you know, but it's funny. It's like I'm blocked in all their comment sections.
Yeah, well, that's good. They're trying to fleece their choir, you know. They're preaching to a choir that they're busy sucking life off of.
They're insecure, it's what they are.
It doesn't profit them to come and, you know, have to talk honestly to somebody else who knows better.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
How about you win a bet?
Funny because it's like, you know, they talk about how they're threatened by, you know, Satanists and magical warfare, or not magical warfare, what are they called? Spiritual warfare.
Spiritual warfare.
Stuff. Yeah, spiritual warfare. And it's kind of like, okay, so you have me blocked, but I don't have you blocked, and you are accusing me of spiritual warfare or whatever it is that they believe. It's just, I find it hilarious, you know.
How about you win a bet half that shit is rehearsed?
Well, I think it's just bullshit. I think they've just bought into their own bullshit. That's what I think it is.
Yeah, and if they wanted to find out about spiritual warfare, I think there's a few people that hang around your channel who would be very happy to hand that to them. Mm-hmm. You know, who aren't nearly as nice as you. Yeah. You're actually pretty nice to people who are otherwise horrible.
Well, thanks. But, yeah, I mean, it's funny because it's like recently I've been watching that show Through the Black, and the one guy he quit his job, you know, and so he's really relying upon the sales of this videos, and so he's really been pushing those lately. So his level, like before, maybe on a scale from 1 to 10, his talk about, you know, satanic cults and all this stuff was like maybe at a 6. You know what I'm saying? It's like, you know, about that level. Now he's like, you know, like a 9 and a 10, because he's really got to sell it so that people will buy his video. So, it's kind of funny.
Speaking of people who peddle bullshit on YouTube, there's one person that I think would never step foot in our chat, but at the same time, we would rip them to shreds. Joshua, I'm going to butcher his last name, but I don't fucking care. Fierstein?
Oh, Josh, yeah, Josh Federstein or whatever it is. Yeah, I know who you're talking about. Yeah, I've never done a video response to him, but yeah, I doubt he would step in here either. But he correct
him on.
Yeah, but he seems to be like kind of more anti-atheist and anti-gay than really like anti-cult or anti-Satanist and anti-Wicca and anti-pagan, you know. Because I've never seen a video of his where he talks about that. But
yeah, I don't know who most of these people are. Yeah, I know the ones that you do responses to. That's about the extent of my interaction with them. People tend to behave a lot better around me in person. So, I don't know if there's a lot of them out there, if this is common, or if there's just a few left, holding on to their little groups.
Yeah. Well, you said they tend to act better towards you in person. Yeah. I mean, I think in person they do act different than they do online, because online there's a certain level of anonymity. I mean, even the whole thing that they do is anonymity, because what they do is they talk about this nebulous cult that's supposed to be out there running around doing these satanic sacrifices. But that's the extent of it. They cannot get any more specific than that. They can't say that, Joe Schmo who lives in Arkansas does it, because then it's like, okay, well, Joe Schmo in Arkansas now has, the he has something to say back to them.
Yeah, and he's got grounds for a slander suit.
Exactly, and they would have to prove it. But if they keep it obscure, then they can kind of, then they can say, oh, well, it happens out there. Well, why does it happen? Because so many people are saying. It's like, that's not an argument. Just because a lot of people talk about Bigfoot doesn't make Bigfoot real.
Yeah, or the Loch Ness Monster. He's one of my favorites. He was believed in because a lot of people wanted to believe in him. He was one of those kind of gods. It's like, man, it would be really cool if there was still a plesiosaur. Can we please get anything that doesn't get debunked? It would be cool. We all want there to be a plesiosaur in Loch Ness. It would be cool.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, there just isn't. And so we just have to go about our lives.
Exactly. And there's a certain level of deniability you can fall back on too, So I think it's funny. So anyhow, I'm gonna start to wrap this up. So
yeah, this was fun. Thanks for holding it.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to be doing these every Wednesday. So obviously you guys are invited to it. And I'm going to try to keep up the Saturday ones. But yeah, because I couldn't stream on my channel for like 3 months. So that's why that's why I took that break there, because I had to.
That was bullshit, by the way.
Yeah, but I mean, it happens, and I learned my lesson. Like, so now when people like Leon, I had my finger on the eject button. I was like, okay, if he does something stupid or whatever, just eject. So yeah. So I learned my lesson from that. I just try to be more cautious, and I'm not going to be posting the link in the chat so that anybody can join. So.
Yeah, so, I don't know if I'll be hooked back up to the internet by the middle of next week or not, but I'll be back on at some point. We'll see.
Well, I mean, yeah, when you get settled down, you're more than welcome to join us. So, yeah,
I'm kind of looking forward to meeting some new forests. Because down in the southeast, they basically, by my standards, they don't have winter, and so everything's going to be green and growing all through the winter months. It'll be interesting to see again. I haven't had that experience since 35 years ago when I was in Florida for a year, and everything stayed green the whole time. Nature was awake the whole time. I've gotten so used to the cycle of the seasons up here in the north that it's going to be really cool to see what there is to discover about what they call winter in the south. I'm looking forward to that. Hopefully there'll be something I can bring back from that experience.
Well, it won't be like the winters you're used to in the north. That's for sure.
This year I was shoveling snow until almost May.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to live in a place that only sees a few flakes of snow once every 7 years. I may just go insane from the monotony. I don't know. But we'll see. Yeah. That's the cool thing, is we'll see. It's still in North America, so it should still be approachable. And
it'll just be a bit of a shock.
Yeah, the not freezing part it might be 2 months from now, and I'll be telling you guys, I keep waiting to freeze, and it hasn't happened yet. I'm not sure. I'm not sure. It's just hanging over my head. I don't know. You've got some of that. You're chilly there year round in San Francisco, right? I mean, you don't really get super hot.
No, the weather here is very mild. It never gets too hot, never gets too cold. It's always very mild. So, yeah, it doesn't. I mean, we do have quote unquote summers. I mean, we do have days where people walk around in shorts and short sleeve shirts, but it doesn't get really hot and it doesn't get really cold. It's always very moderate, even if it's in the middle of winter or the middle of summer. It's just moderate.
Oh,
And
that's
right
nice.
now is actually a good season. It's actually our summer right now is August to September, even into October. We have some really nice weather. So, all right, well, cool. Well, I'm gonna go ahead and end it now because it's 8 o'clock. But it was a lot of fun, and we kind of talked about the topic. But that's just the way these conversations go. We end up talking about whatever. So, so thanks everybody in the chat. Thank you, Animist, and thank you, Leon, for joining me. And have a good night. And I will see you all again.
All right. See ya.
We'll see you as soon as we can. Have a good one, everybody.
You too.